terms of the catalyst to maybe make this become, more prevalent, or even actually start out, are we going to, is it when we run out of power in the UK, as some of the doom-mongers say, or is it just a question of educating the data centre managers that this is actually not just sensible, but does actually maybe bring some benefits? What do you think is needed?
It's mainly all being driven around the element of the stability of the grid. As we know, we can generate power, but the problem is, I believe at peak time, we've only got a very, very small overhead of power availability in the UK. Now, that's obviously in the event in terms of availability, but the problem is with it as well is the grid becomes unstable. At the end of the day, the grid is just one big generator supplying power. The more demand on the grid, the frequency drops. And obviously, the less demand on the grid, the frequency increases. Now, don't get me wrong, the utility companies and the power generation people in this country do a marvellous job in terms of the systems that we have in place in terms of to remove power from the grid when we need to, because obviously we can't just simply turn off a nuclear power station and just expect that the grid is going to adopt the change in power. It just simply doesn't work like that. So basically, the main driving factors behind this are primarily the peak demand times. So basically where the grid is at its peak, when the frequency is dropping, when the problems are starting to occur, when systems are becoming overloaded, that's the part where we need to allow, because the problem is you've got to deal with them peaks no matter what. And if you've got wind turbine, you've got solar energy, if the sun is not shining, the wind isn't blowing, you haven't got that available to you. You still have to generate that power. Now the worst point is when we have to generate that power under peak demand. Okay, because at the end of the day, under peak demand, we've got to bring on either pump storage systems, where we've got to inject power into the grid for short periods of time. It's those short periods of time which are the critical points, because effectively that's the power we have to generate regardless. So if you take into account all of the peak load in the UK, I believe it takes the entire use of a full nuclear power station. And if that's the case, then obviously if we've got a data centre, many data centres should I say around the UK, all injecting half a megawatts worth of power for 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever's demanded by the peak tower in the market, then effectively that is preventing you or the need to build an additional complete power station. So effectively, if data centre managers can buy into it, and the tariffs are there and the benefits from the DNO and to the data centre managers are, enticing, then obviously it's the best way to go, because we have all of this power. The power is all being utilised, but it's the peak times we have to have the power availability, and without that power availability, that's when the problems occur.